The GTA has had an interesting March. Sales were up, inventory was down, and here's the biggest number that my clients and I are focusing on is that 75% of homes actually sold below list price. Because that's where opportunity lives. And we've all been told that this is a buyer's market. There's so much inventory. Buyers have all the leverage. Well, how do you have all the leverage? And is that true across all pockets of the Greater Toronto Area? Perhaps, but perhaps not. If you're a savvy buyer, you know that this is segment specific. And today I'm going to walk you through some of the specific segments in the Greater Toronto Area and the stats that actually make sense if you are actively house shopping. Would you believe that over 90% of you aren't even subscribed to this channel? I encourage you to do so if you get any value from any of these videos. Back to the market, sales actually jumped 30% from Feb to March in March 2026, right across the Greater Toronto Area. And spring is doing what spring does. And the average sales price is also down about 7% at just over $1 million. Prices are softer. That is the headline. But sales actually went up. They're sitting at just over 5,000 homes sold for the month of March, right across the GTA. Know this, okay? March generally outpaces February. We're in Ontario here. February is a tough month. It's cold, it's freezing, we're over it. Spring truly does bring renewal in the real estate market and in the minds of many buyers who are ready to jump right in from being on the sidelines. And that's been true for a lot of this market here today. Now, looking at the sale to list price ratio, which is a number that I generally do have you focus on, it's sitting at 98%. So that tells you that properties are actually there's a 2% difference from what the properties are listed at and what they're sold. And that is your real-time negotiating power. And that is your real-time negotiating power for buyers. Now, the sales to new listing ratio for the month of March in the GTA is sitting at almost 35%. So anything below that 40% is you're in formal buyer market territory. And the question that most people then ask is it going to just be a buyer's market? Well, how long is it going to be a buyer's market? New listings were actually down almost 17% year over year for March as well. However, sales did go up, which kind of tells us what we've already known for a little while, and it's that sellers are sitting on the sidelines. Okay, we do know this. Sellers have had a hard time adjusting, and this is no fault of their own. You know, it's a tough adjustment seeing prices come down as they've adjusted over 26% in some neighborhoods and since the peak, and you're unable to sort of even understand where your home is today, what it should be priced at. You almost feel like you're leaving money on the table. And if you purchased in the peak of the market a couple years ago, then chances are high you're going to be at a loss. However, if life circumstance dictate you having to offload a property, then you're going to need to exercise a good strategy to get you sold and recover as much of those funds as possible and capture the right buyer. So even though we've had more sales and fewer inventory come to the market, I can't say that things are tightening up to the point that buyers are losing leverage, at least not yet, right? It's sort of in that balance to buyer market territory where buyers, you still have leverage here, so use it accordingly. And not all segments are created the same. Of course, the condo market has a much richer, a much robust assortment of inventory than a single family detached in a great school district. The GTA average price is just over $1 million, but that number does a lot of averaging over different realities, okay? So let me break it down for you this way. Like the 416, oh my gosh, 416 versus the 905. Okay, yes, there's all these other new area codes, but those are the ones which I say 416 and 905, you're gonna get what I mean. Detached homes in Toronto proper, so the 416, they're averaging at just over 1.6 million for the month of March 2026. In the 905, so the suburbs, that category of detached is sitting at almost 1.3 million. That's a $300,000 difference depending on where you want to lay roots. For a lot of buyers, this gap between city and suburbs is where making that decision lies for you. And it will come down to affordability. That's a huge one. Because of affordability, that ripple then leaves even the 905 and goes right across the 401 into pockets like Guelph and Waterloo region. It just means that you can stretch your dollar that much further, because if a detached home sitting in the Greater Toronto Area, sitting in Toronto is almost 1.6 million, and a detached home in Guelph is sitting at $860,000, I mean, the affordability is pretty obvious there, right? Of course, then you have to make lifestyle considerations, commute considerations, we're veering off topic. Let me come back. The 416, that Toronto proper, is where 67% of condo sales actually happen in the Greater Toronto Area. So 951 units sold, averaging at almost $650,000 in the condo segment. And that's actually down 9% year over year in the GTA. We know there's more inventory, so there's more negotiating room. And then there's Durham region, actually the most competitive submarket in the Greater Toronto Area. 31% of Durham sales went above asking in the month of March. Buyers there are still competing. It's kind of like an outlier. It gives you the actual strategy, because I started the video with telling you that we didn't have as much inventory come to the market. However, sales did go up. And while so much of the data out there fixates on price, I think it's important that we give a little bit of attention to supply, because that dictates price in many ways. Nearly 3,000 fewer homes came to the market in March when compared to the year prior. And active listings also went down by 8%. Okay. And what that means, at the same time that the sales to new listings ratio is climbing up, the amount of active homes coming into the market is actually leveling off or coming down. Buyers have leverage right now, partly because of the amount of choice. But if listings keep tightening, meaning less homes keep coming to the market, but demand stays, maybe even strengthens, that leverage that these buyers feel, that the strength, the power that you have, that starts to shrink a little bit. Months of inventory is sitting at 4.9% for the Greater Toronto Area. Above 4 is technically buyer market territory, and anything below 4 tends to sort of flip the other way. And I'm not suggesting that our market is ready to be flipped by any means. I'm just giving you a little bit of context to some of the other factors that affect our housing market. If you watch any of my Guelph or Waterloo region markets and you're curious about some of the other outlying markets than just the Greater Toronto Area, then I'm going to offer you a little bit of context. The GTA Composite benchmark, is sitting at just over $940,000. Guelph's median sale price is sitting at $740,000. That's roughly a $200,000 difference. The segment that you're shopping in matters greatly, but that $200,000 difference is what you are going to factor in if you're looking at these submarkets surrounding the GTA proper. And you'll have to factor in a commute. You'll have to factor in the lifestyle cost into that decision. And to be frank, new listings are tightening in Guelph as well. We're down just over 7% when compared to last year. And this is less inventory that's coming up, less than what you'd expect in a technically buyer's market. These numbers and sort of the average detached price point or the detached price point in other, the suburbs has you rethinking settling in the city versus the suburbs or even further. Then links to my Guelph, Waterloo region market updates are all just on the channel. Please go have a look. Back to sort of the question that, a lot of clients are curious about in the beginning of the video. Is this just spring behaving as spring, or is this any kind of shift? And honestly, it's tough to say which one. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Some of March is just the spring market. Okay. Some of April is just spring. It's just how our market responds to March and April, especially after the cold winter months. But supply is tightening in certain segments. Okay, sellers aren't all rushing to list. And the sales to listings ratio is also stabilizing. And none of these things, okay, nothing that I've covered in this video makes this a seller's market by any means. No, buyers still have leverage in the GTA specifically. Over 75% of neighborhoods sold under list price. That tells you something as a buyer. Use the conditions, use the time that you have to your advantage, and make a thoughtful decision. If you're curious about any of the sub markets that I haven't mentioned here, but definitely fall into that Greater Toronto or just beyond, reach out. I'd be happy to discuss those numbers specifically with you.